Hi, everyone, and welcome back. I am so excited. I have a true legend with the podcast today. I have to say that, really, it's quite an honor. You guys, Todd Kinney is sitting with me today. Welcome, Todd.
Hello. I think your bar for what constitutes a legend is pretty low, Melissa.
I don't know. I don't think so. I really don't. I have to say. So, this is just a quick backstory. I talk about a lot on here how podcasts in the early days really helped me stay sober, get sober. I would put them on, I would hit the road, walk the parks, exercise and podcasts and quit lit all really contributed to my early days of sobriety. And I remember yours on Sober Motivation with Brad McLeod was one of the early ones that I heard. And it didn't really occur to me that it was yours until recently when you popped up on the Sober Motivation community and shared your story there, that I was like, oh, yeah, that's Todd Kinney. I remember this story because it was so poignant. The story about your kids, the realization, the kids with the ball game, and, we'll get into all of that. But and as you were relaying your story on Sober Motivation, I had this aha moment with so many things you were saying that I felt like you were the male version of me. Because you describe yourself as a classic gray area drinker, which I have always called myself that. You, teetered on the edge of taking these breaks of alcohol and then going back and trying to moderate, playing that moderation game, those
Yeah.
mental gymnastics and all of that entailed. And and now in reading your book, he's got an incredible book out. I didn't believe it either. One Dad's Discovery That Everything is Better Without Alcohol. There are just so many parallels between our stories. So after that share on the Sober Motivation community, I had to reach out and say, you got to come on the podcast and we have to talk more. So that is why I describe you as a legend. Maybe I mean, it's a legend in my eyes. And really, that's all that matters, really.
I'll take that. I'll take that. Yeah.
So I'm really glad you're here and you're calling in from Omaha. Is that right?
Yes. Omaha, Nebraska.
Excellent. I don't know if I've ever been to Omaha. I don't think I have.
It's not what I would call a destination place for a lot of people, but I find a lot of people come to Omaha if they've never been here. They come with like very low expectations,
Right.
and they're pleasantly surprised with what they find.
Right. Well, it's the Midwest. I'm from Wisconsin originally, so
Okay.
I can
So you,
relate to. Yeah,
yeah, you know what the Midwest is like then.
exactly. It's
Yeah.
beautiful. It's farm
Yeah.
country, really good people. So,
Yes. Yes.
well, welcome in. And I mean, where should we start this thing? I know you've told your story quite a few different places. First of all, congrats because you are coming up on 6 years of sobriety, which
Yeah,
is
which is crazy.
amazing.
It does not seem. I mean, on the one hand, it doesn't seem like it's been that long. I mean, 6 years. Yeah, that seems crazy. I mean, it sort of went by in the blink of an eye. And if you would have told me that half the things that would have happened in these last 6 years would happen when I stopped drinking, if you would have told me that 6 years ago, I would have said, "You're absolutely crazy." And
Yeah.
there's no,
Yeah.
if you would have told me I'd be sitting here on a podcast with you talking about a book I wrote about quitting drinking,
Yeah.
I'd say no. The chances of that are like a 1 in a million.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I can relate to all of that kind of stuff too. The one thing I did write down, I think one of the first things I heard you say when you were retelling your story that I related to, you drank faster than anyone else. And
Yeah.
when you said that, I thought, so did I. Like
Really?
I could pour, if I had a bottle of wine, I could pour half a bottle into a glass. a tumbler, about half a bottle would fit into a glass. And I could drink that very fast. And then the second half, yeah, I could. I could
Yeah.
relate to that 100%. Same for
Do you
you.
still do you do it with non-alcoholic drinks too? Because I do.
Yeah. I mean, water, I drink like crazy if
Yeah.
I'm really thirsty. Coffee, I mean, I'm an iced coffee person. I can drink iced coffee really fast. Carbonated drinks, not so much, but
Yeah.
flat drinks, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
It's weird. I don't know why that is, but it's always been true for me.
mhm,
And it's always been true with alcohol and non-alcoholic drinks. I physically drink faster than almost anyone else I know.
yeah. So, did you find? I mean, for me too, when I was drinking, that I mean, part of the reason I drank fast was to get that buzz faster.
Yeah, I think I know I'm sure that was part of it for me with the alcohol. Um, it was I was kind of always in, and you've probably found this when you remove alcohol, eventually things just kind of slow down and things get calmer. At least, I have this internal sense of peace and calm that I never even knew existed. But when I was drinking, I was always in a hurry.
Mhm.
I think in the book I call it like my race to nowhere. Like
Yeah, I
I was
love that.
racing to get somewhere, and part of it was I was racing to get to that buzzed state, and so that was part of my fast drinking. But I think it also has to do with sort of my, I have some compulsive tendencies to my personality.
Yep.
Um, I drink a lot of coffee, and it's mostly decaf because if I drank regular coffee with as much as I drink, I would be going through the roof by 10 a.m. That's just how my personality is.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so your story, these, talk about what leads up to your first break, your first 90-day break. I mean, or how far do you want to go back? Because
Well, I'll go back to college because that's where
okay.
I drank in high school, but I would say less than my peers as I remember it. So not a lot, but I did drink in high school. But I think of my drinking career sort of beginning in earnest in college, because that's where I drank a lot more in college. It didn't feel like I was drinking all that much when you look around and you compare yourself to other college students, because it's everywhere. And this was in the, I'm gonna date myself here, but this was in the '90s, mid '90s. Binge drinking was as common as going to class
Hmm.
on college campuses, and so I knew there was something about my drinking that I didn't like, and I knew on some level that it wasn't probably healthy. But in college, again, everywhere you look, people are drinking as much, if not more, than you, and so it's very easy to just dismiss that and put it away and not deal with it. And I love drinking, so I didn't want to deal with it.
Yep.
But the hallmarks of my drinking were the same in college as they were when I decided to quit, and that was, I drank more. I got drunker than most people too often. I was the drunkest person in the room more often than I wanted to be. Um, I would go from, I could go from like seeming like I was fine after a couple drinks to just like not being fine, sort of in the blink of an eye. And I would routinely drink more than I told myself I was going to, or more than I planned on. And then you wake up the next day and you go through that whole cycle of why did you do that? You beat yourself up and you get the shame and the regret, and I didn't like that part of my drinking. But after a while, I sort of figured that's just part of the package. Um, and so that never really changed. I mean, obviously, I got older, and at age 30, I hope I wasn't drinking as much as I was when I was 20, but I was still drinking in the same manner. And I
Hmm.
was still plagued by the same things that I was plagued with back in college. And I still had all sorts of, internal conversations with myself of why did you do this again? What's wrong with you? Why can't you fix this? Why are you the only person on the face of the earth who can't seem to drink like a normal person?
Mm-hmm.
I had that conversation with myself hundreds of times. And so the drinking, the things that plagued my drinking never really went away. Even if I was drinking less, even if I wasn't binge drinking every single weekend like I was in college, those things never went away. And as you get on in life and you go from college student to grad student or professional or husband, dad, your circumstances change, and the drinking starts to feel different, and getting wasted when you're 30 and you have two small kids at home is different from doing it when you're 20 and you just have to worry about going to class on Monday. So my circumstances changed, and
Right.
I did not seriously start evaluating or thinking about my drinking until 2013.
Mm-hmm.
And that was when I took the break that you mentioned for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason I kind of did that by accident, and I say that because I started seeing a therapist for the first time in 2013. But I went to the therapist for the first time because I was not in a great spot with my marriage, and it just felt like my wife and I were in a rut. We were fighting more than normal, and I didn't like, especially how I was shutting down when we would start getting into an argument. I would shut down very quickly and just stop talking, and that was not like me, and I didn't like that I was doing that, but I was having trouble like stopping doing it. And so I thought to myself, this is not good. This is not a healthy pattern. I need to do something about it. So I went to a therapist for the first time in 2013. I told her all of that stuff, and we talked about my marriage for about 5 minutes, and then we talked about drinking the rest of the appointment,
Yeah.
and ended up talking about drinking for most of my time with her over like 11 years. And so she was the one who suggested that
Yeah.
initial break.
Was she able to extract the drinking idea, or did you bring it forth?
I think I must have said enough in that opening 5 minutes where,
Yeah.
she being a professional is probably spotted, okay, there's more to this than just fighting with his wife. I think there's, the drinking is
Right.
causing a lot of this. And I think the drinking was causing a lot of internal conflict with me, which of course can spill over into your relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. But did you put those two together before you
N-
saw the therapist? Not at
no,
all. Not at
no,
all.
no.
Yeah.
I didn't. I mean, I knew on some level that I didn't love my relationship with alcohol,
Right.
but I kind of put that in its own category, and
Yep.
like it didn't really dawn on me that would have an impact on other areas of my life, which
Right.
sounds really crazy now, but when you're in the middle of it, I'm not thinking, well, maybe I'm fighting with my wife because I'm not happy with my relationship with alcohol.
Right.
And I didn't want, I mean, I don't know about you, but I went to great lengths to minimize, rationalize, explain, anything to kind of downplay whenever concerns would bubble up to the surface. Anything I could to downplay those with alcohol, I would, because for a long, long time, I was just too scared it was just too overwhelming to even go down a road where having to quit
Mhm.
was like, don't even say that out loud.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just too much. It's just too
Right.
much.
So it was her idea to take a 90-day break?
Yeah, she
Mhm.
suggested it during that first visit, and I
Mhm.
thought she was like I felt like she was asking me to run into a burning building. I was like, 90 days? Are you kidding me? Like, how about a week? Maybe two. I mean, 90 days, I immediately, cataloged in my head everything we had. I remember it was the fall.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking like football. We had a trip coming up. Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's. Like, oh, I'm like, no, no, you don't do those things without alcohol.
Hmm.
And it
Yeah.
terrified me.
Yeah.
Terrified me.
Well, I had I had a doctor's appointment back in 2018 where my liver enzymes were elevated, and my doctor said take a break for 3 weeks, and it terrified me.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I did it because I'm a rule follower, and in those 3 weeks, I felt amazing, and
yeah,
but thinking about 3 months, that would have been terrifying. Yeah.
yeah. It was terrifying. And one thing she said that really helped get me over the hump was she said, "You're not doing this forever."
Right.
I think she knew even back then. She knew like, the only way to true happiness for this guy is to give it up. But if she could have told me that 100 times, then I would have been like,
Yeah.
yeah, whatever.
Right.
Um, but so at the time she said, look, you're not drinking is going to be there. It's going to be there at the end of this 3 months. You can go back to drink. It's not going anywhere. And
Mhm.
that I was kind of like, okay, that's a good point.
Mhm.
And I'm kind of a rule follower too, and I'm
Mhm.
also very goal oriented. So I started to look at it as like, all right, let's set a goal to do this for yourself, and let's do it. And I like the feeling of accomplishing goals. I like the feeling of doing something that is hard. So I just looked at it as I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it because I said I was going to, but I was very very focused on that 90th day, and when that day was on the calendar and when I could have that drink again.
A- And you did.
And I did.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like
And I'm very,
you were looking forward to it.
yes,
No
I,
y- no matter how you felt.
yes, right. Quitting at that point was like nowhere near my
Right.
radar. It was,
Right.
I was going to do the 90 days
Mhm.
to see what I wanted to fix the way I drank.
Right.
And
Right.
I was convinced that taking this 90-day break would do that.
Yep. Yeah.
And it did for a little while,
Mhm. Mhm.
but as these things go, it wasn't a permanent solution because that's
Mhm.
not how alcohol works.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's amazing that we tell ourselves we can take a break, we can prove it to ourselves that
Yeah.
we can do this, and then surely we're healed, and that means we can figure it out. We can make it work.
Right.
It's the last thing. It has to be the last thing that we can't give up, you know? And I love that part in your book, and I've been using it with my clients where you say, "I- if we had bad relationship with broccoli, if broccoli was making us feel bad and we
Yeah.
took a break from it for 90 days, would we go back to eating it after 90 days? Hell no, we wouldn't. Why would we do that, right?
I know. I know. It doesn't make any sense if you substitute alcohol for just about anything else and say this is the net effect this thing has on my life.
Yeah.
The sane rational response is, well, why is it in your life?
Yeah. Yeah, I
But
know. I know.
it's
It's
not that simple.
no, we cling to it. We need to make it work. So the 90 days comes and goes. You start drinking again. And where does it go from there?
So things were good for a while, and I thought for some period of time, I'm like, you know what, that 90 days really really did the trick. um, And then eventually, you know how these things happen. It's not really all at once, but it kind of slowly creeps back
Mhm.
into your life, and that's what happened with me. Like, there's a night here where I was like, ooh, that night felt a little bit too much like a lot of my nights before my 90-day break. Like, okay, what'd you learn? What can we do differently next time? And so, you talk yourself through that whole exercise, and then you go a little. I'd go a while, and things would be fine, and then another night, and then another, and then another, and then eventually it's at least with me, for a while, you stop examining it so closely because it's tiring as hell.
Yeah.
How many times can you go through the same exercise and the same talk with yourself and then do the same thing all over again?
Yeah.
So for a while, I'd go through periods where I didn't have the energy to do it. And then a couple years after that first break, I decided to take another break, another 90-day break. That I decided to do that on my own because, again, I felt like I just needed a reset.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, hey, if I can decide to do this on my own,
Mm-hmm.
then I don't have a problem with alcohol, because who decides to take a 90-day break a second 90-day break
Right.
on their own?
Yep.
And so I did that second 90-day break, and it was fine. It felt a little different than the first one. It felt my heart wasn't in it as much. I think because I knew somewhere inside me, I knew, like, this isn't, you're doing something, but it's not what you need to be doing. But
Mm-hmm.
it was like a Band-Aid for
Mm-hmm.
something that needed more than a Band-Aid.
Right.
But again, to your point, you don't want to go there, and we cling to whatever we can so to avoid going there.
Yep.
And so, same thing after that second break. Things were fine for a while, and then they started to come back. My old habits started to come back, because that's always what happens with alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and around 2019, so we're 6 years
Yeah.
6 years removed from when I walked into my therapist office for the first time.
Right.
That's how, I mean, it sounds like it is a long time. Um, but I think that's fairly common for people when they're evaluating something like their alcohol use.
Very common. Yeah.
Um, I tried everything. I didn't even, I mean, even at the beginning of 2019, I quit in October of 19, but at the beginning of that year, quitting was, I would say, still not even on my radar screen. But I was, I was, it was weighing on me more than it ever had. And it was feeling different, and it was consuming me more than it had. It was like, it was dogging me, and I couldn't get away from it like I could in the past.
Yeah.
And a lot of that was my kids. My
Right.
kids were getting to the age where they would recognize when I drank too much and other adults drank too much, and so that made me really uncomfortable. I did not like that at all.
Mm.
You know, when you see videos of people, there's that video of, like, David Hasselhoff. I don't know if you've seen that, eating a cheeseburger, and he's wasted, and
Yeah.
one of his kids he's sitting on the floor, and one of his kids is taking the video of him, and it just makes your, oh, it just, you get a pit in your stomach, and that's how I felt about, like, my kids seeing me wasted. And it didn't happen a lot, but it happened enough times, and I knew it was going to continue to happen. Like, I didn't know how often, and it's not like it was happening every weekend, but I knew that it was going to happen again, and that started really bothering me. And I started thinking more about how much our kids were just around excessive drinking by me and other adults, because that's what our social circle did. And that, I didn't love that. And so that started to weigh on me more. And then the summer of that year is when I had the incident with my son at a baseball game,
Mm.
where me and a friend and like 4 or 5 kids went down to the College World Series, and we all sat and we all went down together, and we hung out for a little bit before the game, and then we all had tickets in different seats, so everyone kind of dispersed in like 3 or 4 different groups, and I went with my friend, and the kids went and sat by themselves, and I had not had very much to drink that day, because I was driving this van full of kids home, and so my son had not really seen me drink, and I was not drunk, and he hadn't seen me drunk. But when we met up in the concourse after the game to meet up to walk back to the car, my son said to me, "Dad, do we need to take an Uber home?" And I was said, no, why do you ask that? And he said, well, sometimes when you and Mr. Peterson get together, you can get kind of rowdy.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I brushed it off in the moment, but I could not stop thinking about that comment the rest of the day. It was the first thing I thought of when I woke up the next morning. I just thought, what am I doing? Like he was 14 at the time. And I thought my 14-year-old son, because of my drinking habits, feels the need to ask me if we need to take an Uber home from a baseball game.
Yeah.
Like the one, you know, parenting is really hard, and none of us really know what we're doing. I don't think
No.
it's a lot of hoping and praying and crossing our fingers. But the one thing every parent wants, and every parent has some control over, is making your kids feel safe.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the baseline, right? and and the idea that my kid did not feel that he had a safe ride home from a baseball game, I just thought, I'm not doing this right. I got to be better than this. Like, this is not acceptable as a dad, to have a son or a daughter who doesn't know if they have a safe ride home. That's not acceptable.
Yeah.
Um, no, I didn't do anything about it. That next day,
Right.
that was summer of 2019, and it wasn't until October of that year that I gave it up. But boy, that really hit me in a place that um, was new to me, and it was like all the Friday and Saturday and Sunday mornings of waking up and feeling that shame and regret
Mm-hmm.
and beating myself up. It was that times like 50.
Yeah.
And it was one thing to like have that conversation with myself about what I was doing to myself.
Mm-hmm.
But now all of a sudden it was involving my kids.
Mm-hmm.
And like there was no taking that back. Like my son, it wasn't a mistake. He wasn't saying it. I mean, he was sort of joking, but he wasn't joking about the question. Um, there was no putting that toothpaste back in the tube. And once I realized that my drinking was having a negative effect in some areas on my kids, then that was like that was too hard to run from. I couldn't run from that, because that's not, I think being a parent is a about the most significant privilege you could ever ask for,
Yeah.
and kids don't deserve to not feel like to feel like they might not have a safe ride home from a baseball game
Yeah.
because you like to drink. Like
Yeah.
that doesn't
I
fly.
that that was what stuck out to me, that first podcast I heard you on. Like that just as a parent myself, it was like, oh, yeah, it was like a stab, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah,
Because kids, they tell it like it is. And there was nothing premeditated or any,
no,
it was just he was really wondering if he was going to be safe riding home that
yeah,
day, you know?
yeah.
And and the fact that it really got to you and probably was really what made you turn the corner, you
It
know?
was. Oh, it was. I tell people all the time. I didn't have a. You don't have to have a flame out like spectacular rock
Mm,
bottom.
no.
I used to think that that's what happened before people quit drinking.
Mhm.
You crash your car, you get arrested, you lose your job, something like that. And I never had that, but I had a lot of nudges along the way, and that one was a more forceful nudge than others. And even though at the time it made me feel like absolute garbage, I'm so grateful for it now, because that
Yeah.
that flipped something for me in that I started thinking about it differently, and like I said, it was one thing to be maybe not living up to myself as much as I could be doing for myself. But when I started realizing you're not being the best dad you can be
Mhm.
because of your drinking, like then what are we doing here? What are we
Yeah.
doing? Like,
Yeah.
is drinking more important than being the best dad you can possibly be? Like, no, it's not.
Right.
Even I who love drinking, I couldn't lie to myself about that.
Right. Does he know you talk about that all the time and it's
He
a big part of
does.
your story? Yeah.
Yeah, he does. It's funny. I was just at the College World Series is going on right now,
Oh,
and I was just at a game last Friday with a fellow sober person who knows my story, and
yeah.
he said, "So where were you when your son made that comment?" And I actually turned around and kind of showed. I was like, you know what? I don't remember the exact spot. It was somewhere right over there, but
Wow.
so it was. I love thinking about it, going back there every year, just because of the
Yeah.
change it helped.
Yeah.
It helped sprout.
Ugh, I love it. I love that. So that's a few months before, and then I mean, you got to tell the story about your parents too, I mean, because
Yeah.
that happens right before as well, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
that was the last day I had a drink.
Oh, was it really?
Was that day? Yeah,
In
yeah. So
Arizona.
in Arizona, it was October of 2019.
Oh
So a
gosh.
couple months after the College World Series game,
Okay.
we were there for a family friend's 40th birthday celebration. So it was just adults, no kids. And it was, I don't know, a group of about 12 or 14 people. Very close knit, like they're like sisters to me. My parents and their parents went to high school together. So families have known each other forever. We always have a great time. And I knew this weekend was going to be a lot of fun, and I was looking forward to it because it was one of those weekends where I could, kind of drink like how I wanted to. And we had a day, and we were staying at a nice resort. The weather was great, and we had the Saturday of the trip. Everybody's hanging out by the pool, and we're drinking, and everyone's having a good time. I'm drinking, of course, more than everyone else, or I'm at least getting more drunk than everyone else. And then dinner time comes, and we had a room reserved in the resort for our group to have dinner that night. And so everyone kind of scatters from the pool and goes up to their rooms to get ready. And my wife is desperately hoping that I just stay in the room for the night.
Mhm.
And I, of course, think she's being totally ridiculous and just needs to get off my back. And she gets ready and goes down to the room, and I get ready and go down to the room. And I walk in, and I was going to say I was fine. I wasn't fine. I wasn't stumbling, but I was the drunkest person in the room, and she knew it, and a few other people knew it. And that's no fun for your spouse when your spouse puts you in that position. And I'm sitting there at a table next to her, and across the table are my parents. And my wife Beth whispers into my ear. She says, "Your parents are staring at you." And I was like, what do you mean?" And she's repeated herself. She said, "Your parents are staring at you." And I kind of just brushed it off because I didn't want to go there, and kind of went on with my night. And the woke up the next morning, and I that's the first thing I thought of was her comment that my parents were staring at me. I could not get that out of my head. And my parents are two of the most compassionate, loving, kind people you'll ever meet. And so I was not thinking that they were staring at me with like disgust or disdain or anger. What I was thinking was knowing them, they were probably looking at me, and they were sad at what they
Mhm.
saw. And they
Mhm.
might have been sad for my wife too. But I just
Mhm.
thought of them looking at their adult son who had four kids of his own in that state, knowing that I had been there before, knowing that this was not the first time, my wife was telling me to go back up to the room. Knowing all of that, I just thought they were probably sad at what they saw. And that, again, wrecked me in a way that, like, none of my internal conversations with myself ever had. This
Mm,
was different. I wanted to crawl out of my skin. I
mm,
wanted to rewind a day so it would never happen. I just hated the way it made me feel. It took me back to like being an 8-year-old kid
yeah.
who made his mom cry. Like, that's
Yeah.
just the worst feeling in the world.
Yeah.
And I could not shake that. I just wanted to run away from it all, but at the same time I knew it wasn't going away. I knew, as badly as I wanted it to just go away that very second, those feelings were not going away. So I just wanted to get home. I remember like going to the airport, just thinking, just get me back to my house with my kids, and it just wouldn't go away. And so um, I remember that day. It's funny because I didn't remember doing this at the time, but that day I texted my therapist and I said, I'm going to take another 90-day break. And I said, I think I may be done with alcohol.
Wow.
Because I don't remember, I knew when I was going to take that another 90 day, I knew something was different. I didn't know exactly how, but I didn't remember quitting still being that much in the, what I was thinking about. But I was just disgusted with myself. I just thought, how many more times are you going to do this?
Yeah.
Like, how many more times? We're going to do this for the next 10 years?
Yeah.
Because you don't seem to be figuring it out. And I felt like I needed to like punish myself. Like, I needed to serve a sufficient penance for letting this happen again, and sort of ruining, a nice weekend celebrating this person's 40th birthday. And so I was very determined to like punish myself. And I'm like, all right, 90 days minimum. We're not even thinking about anything else until you get through this 90 days. And then at some point during that 90 days, my therapist suggested doing 6 months instead of 3 months, because she said, you've done the 90 days twice before, and here we are. So why don't you try something different? And I was fairly open to it at the time. I said, okay, I'll do 6 months. That's fine. Because again, I was still very motivated to punish myself sufficiently. And then sometime between that third month and the fourth month, I decided that I was done. And I remember, still to this day, I remember where I was in the car. I was driving by myself. I remember what street I was on. And I had the realization that I think everyone has eventually, that I was never going to control my drinking the way I wanted to. It
Mhm.
wasn't going to happen. And I don't know why. Um, I don't know why that is, but I said to myself, you've got 25 years of evidence in the bank.
Yeah.
You know what happens. How much more evidence do you need? And I thought, I don't need any more evidence. You know the drill. You know how this goes, and you know no matter what you try, what's going to happen. And once I accepted that and admitted that, um, the next choice became crystallized very clearly for me. It wasn't that I was like ready to jump at quitting, but I thought, well, there's only one thing left to do. Like, if you've accepted that it's never going to change, and you're at a point where you want to make a change, which I was at a point where I was just sick of my shit.
Mhm.
I was just sick of it. I was
Yep.
tired of it. I was tired of letting myself down. I was tired of breaking promises to myself. I was tired of the way drinking was making me feel. And so I was at a point where I wanted to make a change, and I thought, well, then there's one thing left to do, and then so I decided to do it, and then it still took me like a week to say it out loud to my wife.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Because I was nervous, and I rehearsed the conversation, and I started to tell her like 3 or 4 different times
Yeah.
before I eventually did, because I knew once I said it out loud to another person, especially my wife, There was no going back.
Right.
I couldn't tell her I was going to quit, knowing that a big reason why I was quitting was because it was affecting me as a spouse and it was affecting me as a parent. I couldn't tell her that I was going to quit and then go back on it, because then that's just being an asshole.
Hmm.
And so I eventually, got up the nerves to tell her, and I told her, and so that Saturday in Arizona ended up being the last time I had a drink.
Yeah. Well, I love that part in the book too, when you have that realization that was it. Because, and I think we are lucky, because I had that realization as well. I had it immediately in my scenario. The people that know my story, I had a doctor's appointment that did not go well, and the blood work panel that I got back was atrocious. And I had had high liver enzymes in the past, and I made changes and went back to it, always thinking I could moderate. And this last time I got those results, and it was instant.
Was
I
it?
I cannot do this anymore. I'm done.
Yeah,
Instant.
yeah.
To the point where when people ask me, "Did you ever have cravings? Did you ever?" I really didn't, Todd, because it was like you say, 25 years, and I'm a few years older than you. So let's say 28 years. I've had I've done it. Like,
Yeah, right, right.
I'm done. I had a good
You had a
career.
good run.
I had a great run, longer than Cats, longer than Phantom. I mean, like, I got that on my phone, my chart, and I said, "Holy shit." And my doctor said, "Drastic behavioral changes, or I'm going to put you on a slew of medication." I was 51 years old, and I was like, "Fuck that. I am not going to be one of those Americans.
Yeah,
I'm done. I'm done."
yeah.
And it'll be 2 years in August. And, um,
Nice.
but
And-
I had that feeling. And when I was reading your book, it's like a come to Jesus, surrender, whatever you want to call it, and,
Yeah,
and when people say you're lucky, well, you had 6 years of teeter tottering, and I had just as many years doing the same. I just wasn't telling people about it.
yeah,
It was all internal in my
yeah.
head, right? So,
It's
uh,
it's it's funny. For a long time, I was of the mind of, well, if something really terrible happens because of my drinking, then I'll quit. I mean, for a
mhm,
while, I wouldn't say I was hoping for, but I would think about, if I have some sort of health complication,
mhm,
a silver lining would be that I may have to quit drinking. And it was
right,
like, and then one day I was like, why am I sitting around waiting for something like that to happen? Why? That's the most outrageous, insane thing you could do. It was, but I didn't want to take control of it. I didn't want to take responsibility over it, until you realize you do have control over it. You do have
yeah,
responsibility over it if you want it. But I was
yeah,
waiting for someone else to do it. I was waiting for something to happen. It was like I wanted the decision out of my hands. But that's no way to live life.
no, no, you don't want to be forced to do it. You don't
No.
want something totally tragic to happen in order
Right.
to be forced to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, there's one part of the book that really just spoke to me as a parent, and it's this idea of being present for our children. My I have a 22-year-old daughter and an 18-year-old son, and for his 18th birthday this past January, you have boys. I mean, teenagers in general, it's like hard to get any kind of
Yeah. Yep.
response, love, you name it. So for his 18th birthday, I was like, "What do you want to do?" Well, teenage boys are really into fragrances. I don't know about it if they are in
Yes.
Omaha, but they are in New York. So,
We've got a few bottles of cologne in our house.
oh my God. Well, ours, I tease them. I'm like, it smells like a French whorehouse in here. So, so I treated him to a Macy's trip. And of course, we go to Louis Vuitton. I'm like, really, dude? Like, I've never even stepped foot in a designer. Anyway, it made his day, and we get home, and I go about my business. He goes about his business, and he comes walking into my room, kind of sheepishly, and he says, "Mom, I want to open up the fragrance because they put it in a very fancy box, and you
Yeah.
don't know what the bottle looks like because they take it in the
Oh,
back and they wrap it up. Oh, it's very clandestine.
yes.
And he says, would you like to help me open it? And I felt like I had won the Sun
Yeah.
lottery.
Yeah.
Oh, so we walk to his room, and I watch him open it, and all I can think of the whole time is that I'm so glad I'm sober
Yeah.
and that I'm present. And he gives me this big hug and tells me he's the happiest kid he's ever been. And like the idea of being present in that moment and not rushing home to have some wine ready and
Yeah.
this and that. And you talk about going to Houston with Scarlett
Yes.
when you were about 4 months and the
Yeah.
hotel room. And tell me about that story.
Oh my gosh. She knows this story is in the book too, and she kind of rolls her eyes whenever I mention it because I've talked about it so much. But it's one of my favorite stories because it's one of those things that happened at like the perfect time, and it was just I didn't know the impact it was going to have on me obviously before it happened, but we went to Houston to watch the women's national soccer team play, and we had some friends who had moved away, used to be our next door neighbors, and they had moved to Houston. So it's a perfect excuse for a trip to go because I love soccer, and she does too, and to go see the women play and see our friends. And I was about 4 months, and so I was, I wasn't nervous about that trip because it was with my daughter. If I had been with friends and adults, it would have been a little different. But I was comforted by the fact that it was going to be with her. But the day of the game, we went to one of those places that has bowling and an arcade and ping pong and skee ball and all that stuff. And it was we went there a couple hours before the game, and I was very aware of the fact that I was not drinking. I wasn't really craving a drink, but I was very aware that, like, okay, this is different than I would normally. This is a different experience that I would normally have. But what I found during that day was I got to experience that whole experience through Scarlett's eyes. Like I wasn't
Yeah.
worried about drinking. I wasn't worried about how many I had had. I wasn't worried if Scarlett had noticed that I was on my third or fourth beer. I wasn't like doing the math of when we had to leave and how many drinks could I have before we leave and how many could I have at the game after that. And I was just there, and I was just being with her. And I've always enjoyed my time with my kids. But this was different. This was just a different level of engagement and presence that was new to me. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is who knew?" And then so we go to the game, and then we come back to the hotel, and it's just me and her in the room. And if this was a normal trip with my drinking self, I wouldn't have been wasted, but I probably would. I would have been drunk, I'm guessing. Um, and I wasn't. And we were in the room, and we were laying in bed, and she wanted to snuggle, and none of my boys snuggled anymore because they were too old. And that's one of my favorite all time things to do with my kids is to snuggle. And we just laid there and we just talked, and I remember thinking, like, this is so much better than the drinking version of this day.
Mm.
And I thought, drinking can't compete with this. It just can't. Like, how do you choose drinking over the day we just had? And even better, I woke up the next morning and felt like $1,000,000. Whereas, if I had been drinking, I would have woke up the next morning probably a little sluggish and thought, "What- did you have to drink that much? Like, did you have to get a drink in the hotel bar on the way up to the room? Was that necessary?
Yeah.
And was it necessary to just cloud the day with a day with your daughter doing something that you guys both love? And just so seeing it without and experiencing that day without the intrusion of alcohol and the fog of alcohol was just so awesome.
Yeah.
It just and it's one of those moments that, like, because let's be real, it's not always like that when you're giving up drinking. There are days where you're like, this is bullshit, this sucks, I don't like this, why am I doing this? And that was one of those days that just propelled me forward, where you just know in your heart of hearts, like, this is what I'm meant to be doing. And so the next time you have one of those moments where you're like, this sucks,
Hmm.
I could think back on that day and think, yeah, well, this moment sucks, but what I'm doing now is gonna lead to more of those days that I had with Houston and Scarlett, and that's worth. You can't put a price on that.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh,
And
yeah. Thank you. Thank you. No, when I was reading it, it was so I could picture it. The hotel room, how you talk about there would have been a beer on the nightstand,
yeah,
or I wouldn't have even been lying on the bed. I would have been sitting in a chair because it'd be easier to drink in a
right,
chair.
yeah,
Things like
yeah,
that. And when you say, what would the drinking version of this look like? This scene. That's really important. I want people to pay attention to that because we can think about that with any part of our lives as we go up along. I'm at the beach right now. What would the drinking version of sitting at the beach, and I can see it because I can look around. I can see the people that are drinking
yeah.
and what they look like at the end of the beach day compared to what I look like at the end of a beach day and then the next morning. And that's a really great way to think about it, especially those days with your kids,
Oh my gosh,
because it's you can't get those days back. And
right.
really,
No, and it's
really,
and they, those days go fast, and you
fast.
blink and they're gone. And
Yeah.
I did have a moment around the time I quit where I thought, we get one shot at this thing. Like,
Mhm.
we get one shot. And I knew by that point that alcohol was having a negative impact on my role as a dad. And I just thought, why am I routinely doing something that that makes me not as good of a dad as I can be? Like,
Yeah.
why would I ever do that?
Yeah.
Um, and I did that a lot when I first quit. I would do that a lot, where I would compare whatever, a baseball game, a concert, a vacation, or just a random night, Friday night out. I would compare the non-drinking version to the drinking version. And I
Mhm.
mean, not once did I think, yeah, I think the drinking version would be better.
No, right.
And it's not even close. I mean,
it's
and again, if
it's
you would have told me I would be thinking that, if you would have told me that six years ago, I'd say, no, you're crazy. You're
yeah.
crazy. There's no
Yeah.
way. There's no way versions of a. There's no way a vacation can be better without drinking than it is drinking. No way
Right.
that's true.
Right. Well, you don't know until, I mean, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And you can't do that until, I mean, you have to put some time behind it. You can't figure it out in a weekend. You've got to give yourself 90 days, 120 days, 6 months. Like,
Yeah.
do it. Try it out. Try it on
Yeah.
for size. That's what I say. I mean, this has been amazing. I could talk to you for another 3 hours.
Well,
Really.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it very much.
You'll have to come back at some point.
I'd
This
love
is
to.
incredible. Your book is just wonderful. I really I have my coaching clients and I send them, I know you're a fan of Laura McCown. I always send them either We Are the Luckiest or Push Off From Here. And I have a new male client, my first, and I
Oh,
sent him your book
oh,
and I
well,
sent
good.
him your podcast, and it really was resonating with him. And I think I might have to stock up on your book for any future clients because it really is, it just resonates so much with me. And that gray area drinking and the parenting aspect is just so spot on.
Yeah.
So, I let me ask you if there are parents out there, moms, dads, that are having this, this inclination that life might be better without alcohol. Parenting might be, you know, easier because sometimes we think like we deserve that
Right.
that break that alcohol gives us.
Yeah.
I know I thought that
Yeah.
I need that release. And now that I've been removed from it, it really only added frustration to parenting. It didn't help it at all.
No.
What advice do you have to parents about anyone who maybe is considering, you know, taking a break from drinking, sober curious, anything like that?
I would say quitting drinking has been the single best thing I have ever done for myself as a parent. I mean,
Mm.
it's been the best thing I've done for myself, period. But I can't tell you how much it's improved. Um, not just my relationship with my kids, but um, it's given me a sense of inner peace and calm that I didn't know I needed, and I didn't know that I didn't have. And as you know, with teenagers, having inner peace and calm is really important.
Yeah.
And it just I mean, I get I get emotional talking about this because I feel so strongly about it. But being a dad or a mom, being a parent, I think is the greatest privilege in the world, and it's the greatest gig in the world, and it's the hardest gig in the world. And what quitting has done for me is because as kids get older, I remember, I think we have a tendency to think as kids get older and they get into their teenage years, they don't need us as much because they do. They withdraw from us
Mhm.
and they start to look to their peers for influence and approval and all that. They don't want to spend time with us. And so it's easy to think like, well, they don't need us. They don't want us. And you feel like you're growing apart a little bit. And the reality is when they get to that stage in their life, they need you more than ever, and the things that are going to create a foundation for a good parent child relationship, they come on the kids terms, and they don't come. We can't map that out, we can't plan it out, we can't say I'm going to have a life-changing conversation with my 13-year-old at 7 o'clock on Tuesday when we go out to dinner because that's just not how it works.
No.
And what quitting has done for me is it's expanded the window for the opportunities where you have meaningful conversations with your kids. Whereas the window was like this before because drinking filled up a lot of that space, and now the window's just much larger.
Yeah.
And the other thing that gives me a lot of comfort being a parent quitting drinking is I think when it's all said and done, whenever that is, um, I think I'm going to look back. You never want to look back and regret too much, or you never want to look back and think, well, I wish I would have tried harder, or I wish I would. Taking alcohol out of my life has, I don't know, it's made me feel like I'm giving 100% as a
Mm.
parent, and
Yes.
there's no guarantee that's good enough. But at the end of the day, what else can you ask for other than feel like you gave 100%?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
I swear we are the same person.
it's
No,
funny you say that
I
because
talk about that, about firing on all engines. That
yeah,
like because we could be okay at 70, 80%.
Sure.
But why not try to be 100%? Why not give ourselves that opportunity to be 100%? And when it comes to parenting, oh my God, I mean, because anyone could, I mean, parents, wow, the bar can be pretty low. Like, seriously, we've
Yeah.
seen we've seen that, and
Yeah.
I'm almost finished with your book where you're making those correlations of you're giving lots of examples of the bar being low, especially when you're drinking. And
Yeah.
these days, give the kid the phone, give the kid the tablet, like, let me get my drink on. I mean,
Yeah.
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 So 100%. Life's too short to be anything
It
less than
is.
100%. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh,
Yep.
this was absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all of
Well,
that today, Todd. Really.
thank you for having me. I appreciate it, and I
Yeah.
enjoyed myself very much.
And boy, we didn't even get any talk in about Iowa. That'd be a whole nother hour.
Yeah, you're lucky that you skated that. You don't want to get me started on that. You'll never get me off.
Well, that was another thing. Like, I'm a big Green Bay Packer fan. And I mean, but even I don't think I'm quite as obsessive about my Packers as you are about your Hawkeyes. So,
Yeah, it's a little ridiculous. It's a little ridiculous.
I mean, I do yell at the television. Well, now that I've stopped drinking, I'd probably yell less at the television than I used to.
Yeah, well, that's
But
good. That's another positive.
exactly. For my family, anyway.
Right,
Um,
right.
well, thanks again. And for anyone listening at home, we are going to put all of this in the show notes. Todd's book is available in lots of different places and on his website. And you can follow him on Instagram, and just really inspiring things all over the place from Mr. Todd Kinney, the legend. I'll keep calling you the legend.
All right, I'll take it. I'll take it.
um, Everyone, you know that I love your reviews and all of the comments you leave for me. So keep them coming. And until next time, peace out. You guys, thanks so much for listening to The Sober New Yorker. If today's convo hit home, share it with your people. Hit subscribe, leave a review, and come back for more stories that cut through the noise and serve up the sober truth, New York style. Until next time, be kind to yourself, stay bold, be a badass, and peace out.